Hello, it's Zutshi here, and in this video, I'm going to share with you details about the property market crash you've been waiting for. I'm going to talk about the effect that inflation is going to have on property prices. I'm going to talk about the effect of the Ukraine war is having on us. And this is really important to understand because a lot of people are asking me, Simon, should I be investing in property now or should I wait until UK property prices have corrected or even crashed? So my name's Simon Zutshi. I've been investing in property since 1995, and I've been teaching people just like you how to become successful investors since 2003. That's almost 20 years, 2 decades I've been teaching. And in that time, I've seen the market boom, I've seen it crash, I've seen it recover again. And we've had an incredible growth period over the last 2 years in particular. Now, I must admit, when the pandemic first hit back in 2020, there was massive uncertainty. No one knew what was going to happen to property prices. The Bank of England, who has got a room full of very clever people working this stuff out, predicted that property prices would come down by 16%. And with all the uncertainty, I was also concerned. And I believed that we would see a dip in property prices, mainly because we'd had a massive boom for the previous 10 years. But I've got to admit, I was actually wrong. And I know some people were waiting to buy until prices came down. But I've really thought about this. I've looked at the numbers, and I encourage you to go and do this due diligence and research yourself. And let me give you some facts right here. And this is important because this will help you understand why the property market has not crashed yet, and when the property market is going to correct, and when the UK property market is going to crash. Here's my view. So at the moment, in the UK, the government predicts that we need 300,000 new homes every single year. But in fact, we're only building 200,000 homes new year. So what do you think that does to property prices? Well, if there's an over demand, there's more demand than there's supply, generally prices come up. That's just macroeconomics. Let's think about inflation. So during the pandemic, the government in the UK and all around the world, governments have printed lots of money to help support businesses. And by the way, that's one of the reasons the property market boomed during the pandemic, was all of the bounce back loans and the free money that was, or very cheap money that was available. It wasn't supposed to be used on property, but quite a few people decided to invest that into property. And that's one of the reasons we had a boom, and also the government intervention, because the government knew that the Bank of England was saying property prices were going to come down 16%. They knew they had to step in because the UK property market is very important to the UK economy. So they introduced the stamp duty holiday, which was obviously extended. They introduced furlough to make sure those people who weren't working because of the pandemic were still getting 80% of the salary. I don't know about you, but lots of my friends who had this 80% of the salary were actually saving money because during the lockdowns, they couldn't actually go out and spend it anyway. So a lot of people, strangely, had more disposable income when they were only earning 80% of the salary because they couldn't spend it all. And some of those people decided to invest some of that money back into their properties to improve them. And that's why we've had a real building boom and a real shortage of good work people, and also a massive increase in the cost of materials. Now, because of all that money that was printed during the pandemic, we're starting to see the effects now. We are having very, very high inflation, much higher than it's been for many, many years. Now, for most people, inflation is a bad thing. Have you seen how much food costs in the shops these days? We've had the energy increases, which have been made even worse by the war in Ukraine. So this all has an effect on us living in the UK and our economy. And so prices are going up. Now, that's a bad thing for most people, but I want you to think about this for a moment. As a property investor, someone who has an asset which is going to go up in time, and the more inflation is the cost of living, so it's rents and also it's the cost of property. So inflation actually is one of the reasons why we see generally in the UK property prices go up over time. In fact, if you go onto land registry and do a Google search, you'll see that actually property prices in the UK double about every 10 years. I'm not saying that property prices will double every 10 years. It is an average over a long period, but it's certainly what I've seen. My first house I bought back in 1995 for just under £50,000 in 2020. So after 25 years of owning that, it had doubled again, and almost doubled again. And by the time it's been 30 years, it would have doubled and doubled. So that 10-year average certainly happens for me, even though in 2008, 2009, prices came down when we had the last market correction. What happened back in 2008, 2009 was because the banks had been lending lots of money to people who they probably shouldn't lend money to. Back in the early 2000s, you could just sign something to say, yes, I can afford this mortgage. It was called a self-certification mortgage, and many people who couldn't really afford it signed to say, yes, I could afford. And banks were very happy to lend, and people were very happy to borrow the money, so there was lots of irresponsible lending and borrowing. And what happened was actually, it was the banks who realized they had all this debt, this toxic debt that would never be paid back. And some of the banks started to get into trouble because of that. We saw some banks like Lehman Brothers, etc., were failed and had to shut down. And many of the UK banks had to be bailed out by the UK government, Lloyds Bank, etc. So this was a major situation. The banks just stopped lending. And one of the reasons prices came down, not only have got too high, but even if you wanted to buy property, it was very difficult to get finance. So with no real demand, because people couldn't actually buy houses, the prices came down massively. That's totally different from the situation right now. Right now, it's really easy to borrow money. And the interest rates, despite rates going up, they're still very, very affordable. And so it's important to understand that if you're buying an investment property, whilst inflation means rates might well go up, I think there are two things to think about. First of all, the government cannot really afford for interest rates to go up because they've got so much money they've borrowed. If they go up too much, they won't be able to afford to pay all the interest on the loans they have. So when a government defaults, it's a very bad thing. So there's a lot of pressure on the Bank of England, who normally would increase interest rates to control inflation. Although they're going up slightly, their hands are slightly tied. So we're not going to see the kind of interest rates that you might expect when we have high inflation. However, if you're worried about interest rates going up, you can fix your mortgage. I'm just fixing a mortgage right now for about 2.7% for 5 years. So if you're worried about rates going up, you can take out the uncertainty and fix it. So is inflation a problem for us as property investors? For many normal consumers, it is a problem. For us, it's not really a problem. And also think about this. When we take out a mortgage, here in the UK, it's generally an interest-only mortgage on our buy-to-let properties. So we might borrow, say, £150,000 for a £200,000 purchase. And interest-only means each month we're going to pay interest, but the amount of that loan stays the same at £150,000 for the duration of the loan. So in 20 years' time, that house we bought for £200,000, which might have doubled and maybe doubled again to well over £500,000, the mortgage on it, the amount we owe, is only £150,000. So inflation is good for us as property investors because it erodes the value of money. So the debt we have, the £150,000, is worth a lot less in 20 years' time than it is when we first take out the mortgage. And are you worried about making the mortgage payments? Well, the good thing is you don't make them, because as long as you educate yourself and buy the right property in the right area, the tenant who's living in the property covers the mortgage and the insurance and the maintenance and they cover all of the expenses, and you still have some money left over at the end of the day. Now, how do I know all this? Because I've been investing for a long time. I've been teaching other people. But one of the things I want to share with you, and the reason for this particular title, because I don't believe we're going to see a property market crash. But many people are saying, oh, let's wait and buy when it crashes. Well, it might correct, it might not. And if you've read my book, Property Magic, you'll understand the 5 golden rules I talk about. Let me remind you very quickly. Golden rule number 1, we work with motivated sellers. These are people who need speed and certainty. For that reason, they will give us a discount on the price we buy. That means we're getting instant equity on the day we buy, which is a good thing. Secondly, we only ever buy in an area of strong rental demand. Well, I don't know if you've looked at rental demand recently, but all throughout the country, there is a massive rental demand. In fact, in 2021, Sally Lawson, who used to be the president of ALA, which is the Association of Residential Letting Agents. She's a very experienced letting agent. She works with many, many letting agents. She was sharing on one of our live PIN meetings how her belief was from all the letting agents she'd worked with, rents had in some areas gone up as much as 20, even 25%. There was a massive demand for rental accommodation, okay? So as long as you're buying the right at the right price, you will always be able to find good tenants as long as you have good quality stock, and you should be providing good quality accommodation. So many of the things people worry about, inflation, rising interest rates, when I find good tenants, these are not genuine problems when you know what you're doing. The problem is you might have family, friends who are saying, oh, I don't think you should be investing in property, it's awfully risky. Well, look, is it risky? Yes, it is risky. Can you make mistakes? Yes, you can. Can you lose money? Yes, you can. But what you need to do, if you want advice about property investing, you want to speak to people who have done it, who are doing it, and know what they're talking about. You know, if you wanted to, I don't know, learn how to lose lots of weight, you wouldn't speak to one of your friends who's massively overweight, right? If you want to learn about money, you don't speak to someone who's broke. If you want to learn about property, you speak to someone who's got lots of property and ideally has helped other people do it as well. So your family and friends who've got an opinion about property, that opinion is probably based on the media. And newspaper headlines and newspaper stories, etc., and news stories often focus on the negative. They want headlines. They talk about market crashes because that's far more interesting, saying, well, property market is going to continue to go up as it has for the last few years. That doesn't sell newspapers. So when you're looking at the news, and I'd suggest actually you don't really look at the news, don't put that negativity into your head. You've got to be very careful because family and friends, they love you, they're concerned, they don't want you to lose money. They're coming from a place of caring for you, saying, oh, I don't think you should do that. But the problem is no one ever teaches you about this in school. And the only way you're going to learn about this is maybe you're lucky enough to have family or a friend who has been successfully investing in property, that's great. Or you watch information like this on YouTube, you train yourself, you listen to podcasts and things and learn from people who are actually doing this and recognize that now is always a good time to invest as long as you know what you're doing. It's really important to get the right kind of people around you. And what I'd encourage you to do is find some like-minded people who want to achieve what you want to achieve, who are going to support you and champion you rather than tell you what you can't do. And my strong recommendation is to go and check out the Property Investors Network that I set up back in 2003. It's the largest network with 50 plus meetings around the country every month, apart from August and December where we do big national meetings. But it's a chance for you to go and meet people in your area who are like you, who are doing what you want to do and be inspired by them and learn from them. You see, if they've been successful and they've done what you want, it means it's possible. You want to listen to them rather than people telling you what you can't do because they don't think it's possible to replace your income from property. Is it hard? Of course it's hard. You've got to learn how to do it properly, but we can help you. We've been teaching people since 2003. And if you want to come on a training course and accelerate your learning, we'd be absolutely delighted to help you. Now you can learn for free. You can watch all our videos on YouTube. You can listen to my Property Magic podcast. Those are all great, valuable resources. But there's so much information out there. We put out a lot of free stuff ourselves. The problem is, it's where do you start? By investing in yourself, by coming on a course, it's all organized for you in an easy to understand, easy to consume way. It's going to help you implement it and get the results you want much quicker rather than trying to work it out on yourself. So if you want to come and do this training, obviously you can reach out or we can help you with that. However, the first step is come along to your local Property Investor Network meeting. Now, if you've been before, you know how amazing it is. It's only £20 to come along. However, if you've never been to a PIN meeting before, there's a link below. You can click to go to all the PIN meetings, and there's also a voucher code. It's in the description below this video. If you use that voucher code on the payment page, instead of paying £20 to come along to your first PIN meeting, which by the way is nothing really in the grand scheme of things, but instead of making that investment, you can actually come to your very first PIN meeting completely free of charge as my guest. So you can come and check it out for yourself and decide if property is right for you and see how we can help support you on that journey. Everybody is welcome to come to a PIN meeting. Most people are pretty new. We have lots of very experienced investors who go along and they might know a lot about property, but they recognize the power of networking, connecting. Remember, your network is your net worth. So I don't think the property market's going to crash. I think now's a great time to invest as long as you know what you're doing. Be careful not to listen to the negativity in the media or also from family and friends who care about you, but they just don't know any better. Listen to people who know what we're talking about, who've done it, who've been there, who are still actively investing. That's what you need to do if you want to become a successful investor. Click on the link below. Come and find out where your local PIN meeting. Why not book a place right now? By the way, if you book at least 72 hours in advance before your meeting, and you turn up, you've got a chance of winning some of our valuable training completely free of charge in our monthly prize draw that we do at every single PIN meeting around the country. So I always encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill, come and connect with a load of like-minded people in your area at your local PIN meeting. And don't worry, we don't think the property market's going to crash just yet. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. My name's Simon Zutshi. As ever, invest with knowledge, invest with skill. I do hope you got massive value watching this YouTube video. And if you have, I want to make a recommendation to you. I'd like to recommend you come and check out one of our Property Investor Network meetings. Now we have 50 meetings all over the UK, currently all virtual. What that means is you can visit any one of the meetings from the comfort of your own home. You can connect with other like-minded investors, get local people in that area who can help you your property journey, as well as learning from our guest speakers. Now the investment to come to a PIN meeting is just £20, a very, very small investment. But if you've never been before, you can click on the link below and use the voucher code YouTube and come to your first PIN meeting completely free as my guest to come and check it out for yourself. Now I'm pretty sure once you've been and seen the incredible value you get, you're going to want to go again and again. That's entirely up to you, but take action right now. Click on the link below, find your local meeting, scroll down at where the payment page is, use the code YouTube, and you can actually come to your first meeting completely free as my guest. In the meantime, I've also lined up another video I think you're going to watch as well. So until I see you next, invest with knowledge, invest with skill.